Do you think that the private value will eventually be stipulated publicly, or will it always be separate? Or do you think these permission domains can act as sort of a bridge, an intermediary to allow the value to come on? And perhaps an additional wrapper to that could be this notion of zero knowledge proofs as well, kicking into the XRP.
For me, I see them definitely converging. I think that's the end goal. Because if you look at the Hyperledger Foundation document, it said that the XRP ledger was the global RTGS and the global liquidity marketplace. In order for it to be the global liquidity marketplace, it has to all connect and flow. And even David Schwartz says, when he was asked by Thinking Crypto, do you think the price will be different in different pools? Right away, he says no, because if you have the price of XRP, it's more expensive somewhere and cheaper somewhere else. Somebody's going to make a business out of it. I think it eventually all consolidates on the public ledger. I think it all converges because it's the only way it makes sense.
Try to shed light on the linguistic choices these central banks make to mirage and disguise their true intent.
By the grace of God, I was actually the first person to clearly show that it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing.
Welcome back to the show, first one of 2026, and we have a very special guest today. We have Jesse from Apex Crypto Insights. Someone that has just recently emerged on my radar. All of my community are loving his stuff. He's probably, in my eyes, pioneering the understanding of a lot of these crossover linguistic choices between the big economic amalgams and how they present what they're going to do in future states without letting the broader public understand. So he's got an incredible depth of knowledge, and I cannot wait to unpack a bunch of his research today and chat about what he's up to. We're going to get a bit of his Genesis story as well, and just super pumped to have you on, Jesse. So welcome to the show.
G'day guys, before we get into today's podcast, exciting announcement. We're doing giveaways inside my Patreon. This month, we're going to do $100 worth of gold back, spendable cash giveaway in Patreon, and a very limited edition corduroy 100% cotton RLUSD hat. On top of that, of course, is all the exclusive content in there that does not get released on YouTube, weekly updates, technical analysis, and as I said, monthly giveaways. Go check it out, link below.
It's an honor to be here, man. Thank you for the alpha intro. My goodness. Wow, I didn't know. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's good to know. Thank you so much, man. It's really an honor. I really appreciate the invite. It's really an honor to be on your show, Nate. I've watched your stuff too, and wow, I'm like, okay, all right, I'm not the only one.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So I would love to start with a bit of your genesis, and I know the audience want to know a bit more of the background, how you got into this space and landed in the rabbit holes that you and I know all too well.
Yeah, so I had health. I don't think I've ever explained this portion, but I had health issues when I was young, and I was cured by a natural doctor. We won't go too in detail there because our channel will definitely be cut off but I spent years, started researching medical system and stuff, and that led me to other stuff about mainstream media and then the banking system, and then went down the weeds on these major powerful organizations that we never hear about in mainstream media that you go in depth on your show and on your channel. And so I spent like 10, 15 years researching the central banking system, the elites, and the Bilderbergers, and some names I might not even decide to mention, like everything, going right down the rabbit hole. And what happened is I had just moved to another city, and a guy sitting randomly, like he was just sitting like 2 tables from me in a coffee shop, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Bitcoin?" And so I started looking into it, and then I stumbled on XRP and saw that they were working with all the central banks. I saw they were, at first I didn't realize they were working with all of them, but when I realized they were working with central banks, this is, because I knew too much about central banks and the elites and intelligence agencies and stuff like that. And so I started digging, and of course, the more I dug, the more the hole was just getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and that helped me to do a lot of connections and became just obsessed, absolutely obsessed, and spent...
When was this? Like how long ago?
Oh, about 8 years ago, exactly. Little over 8 years ago. And just literally spent anywhere between 7 to 10 hours almost every single day just consuming all of the content that everybody was producing, like all the top content creators out there, and then doing my own research too, of course. And just, and when you get obsessed, even when you're not researching, even when you're not reading or researching, you're still brainstorming. So you're still, connecting the dots in your brain. Like, regardless, I'm, going to take a leak, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm thinking, I'm thinking about what I've learned, and, can they ever confiscate our XRP? And what about this? And what about that? And yeah, it's just so 6 to 10 hours per day, almost every single day for past 8 years. Sometimes people are like, because I say like, oh, I spent over 17,000 hours. Like, yeah, as if, well, do the math. Like, it's 6 hours per day is literally 2,000 to 2,500 hours per year, right? Times 8 years. So yeah, I just been obsessed. That's how it started. Just this guy just randomly sitting in a coffee shop. Like, the guy had smoked a bit of weed, actually. Everything was really high. He's like, hey, have you heard of Bitcoin? That's how it started. That's how God got me.
And how long ago was that? That
Yeah,
was
8 years ago.
Yeah, and had you heard of Bitcoin?
No, I had nothing. It was literally the end of December, like maybe October, November-ish 2017. Just before XRP, maybe a few months, 3-4 months before XRP just spiked. It went from like 15 cents to like $3.84 or something like that. But that's not US, but yeah, just before that. But I don't remember, because I just remember like stumbling on XRP around that time. I was not impressed with my buddy because I heard that he found it at like less than a penny and never told me. I was like, really? Stayed under my roof for a while, and you're not gonna tell me? No, it's okay.
It's funny.
But that's how it started, Nate. It was, yeah, it's unreal. But yeah, like it's a deep rabbit hole, like you show on your channel.
Absolutely, it is. And I want to maybe kick things off with a layman's breakdown of some of the work you do. And I'll preface it by saying what I've found very interesting in the few videos I've watched of yours is that you really do, much like myself, try to shed light on the linguistic choices these central banks make to mirage and disguise their true intent. So, for example, you've got the likes of Project Agora, Global Layer 1, the Project Enbridge before Project Agora, Project Nexus, all these things that are touted to be experiments or where we're going in a future state. And then they're wrapped with language, as you've pointed out here, unified ledger, regulated liability network, shared ledger, regulated Finternet, all these sorts of things that just keep us off the scent. I'd love if you could just unpack what you think all that means from a strategic standpoint, and then we can probably go beyond that.
So when you say strategic standpoint, meaning why they do that, or do you want me to unpack to explain the connection and how? Do you want me to show the proof of why it's all the same? Because I can do that in maybe 5 to 7 minutes, the whole explanation. But
let's run with that, and plus just wrap in the psychological linguistic strategy they're applying, which is obviously base level, just trying to distract us. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, yeah. So I, by the grace of God, I was actually the first person to clearly show that it's all the same thing, because I think before I started my channel about 8 months ago, people were like, okay, the Liability Network, we know it's using the XRP ledger somehow, and the unified ledger, it's got to be either the XRP ledger or connected to it. I think there's a lot of confusion there, but everybody's done a lot of research. The XRP community knew that, okay, it's connected somehow. It's touching that XRP ledger. It's either the XRP ledger, this one's connecting to it, or so on. But I actually proved in one of my first video that Brad Kimes, shout out to him, and thanks. It's an honor because he picked up one of my videos right away where I showed clearly that it's all the same thing. And I literally prove it out. And I do show that a lot on my channel because I feel that I can never repeat it enough. And it ties into everything. But basically, Gilbert Verdian of Quant Overledger, and this is a project that's so underrated. I mean, people need to look into QNT. They're providing the programmability, interoperability, and the custom APIs for Project Rosalind, which is one of the BIS projects, BIS being the Bank for International Settlements. And, this has been made public by the BIS. So when you dig deep into Quant, you literally know that they're literally the programmability, interoperability, and the custom APIs for pretty much all the BIS projects. Quant is literally your operating system for this fourth industrial revolution that we're going in. So Gilbert Verding, the CEO, while he was talking about the regulated liability network, he said we provided the programmability, interoperability, and custom APIs for the project, but we also partnered with R3, who are bringing the shared ledger where all of the tokenized assets will reside. Now, the regulated liability network, so he's admitting that he's partnering with R3. Now, R3, the shared ledger is the XRP ledger. R3 received, billions of dollars from billions of XRPs. There's a long story, but they received $5 billion. There was a lawsuit settled for about maybe $1.1 billion. But that without spending 20 minutes to prove that shared ledger is the XRP ledger that he says R3 is bringing over, right? So then we see in the documents from Citi, Gilbert Verding's always sitting on stage with Tony McLaughlin of Citibank. He's the head technologist for Citibank. And Tony said in one of the interviews that the regulated liability network is just, if you take all the banks in the world, technically they all have a ledger, you put them all into one shared ledger, that's the regulated liability network. And essentially that is, he says if you connect all of them to a shared ledger, that's what the regulated liability network is. So he's saying that the regulated liability network and the shared ledger are the same thing. We've got a document from Citibank saying that the regulated liability network used to be called the regulated internet value. The first time it was ever mentioned in a 2021 document by Citibank, it was called the regulated internal value, but they changed the name real quick because they know, hey, we can't call it the internal value. We can't call it the regulated internal value either because everybody knows the internal value is Ripple. Now, there's a big misconception in the community. A lot of people think that, all blockchains are part of the internal value. That's incorrect. Ripple is the internal value. All the other blockchains are part of what we call the fourth industrial age or the tokenization age. But the internet of value itself is that XRP ledger. Now, we could argue that Stellar will play a role because they do small, medium enterprise, and they kind of do the same thing as XRP, obviously, but they're more for peer-to-peer and small, medium enterprise, while XRP is that global RTGS. So, anyways, Citibank admits that the first time was ever called Regulatory Network, they called it Regulated Internal Value. And then we have, oh my goodness, where was I going this? I didn't sleep much last night because of my cold. So, and then, sorry, I'm having a blank out here. So yeah, so other documents coming from a central bank saying that the Regulated Liability Network could become a global RTGS. And then we have documents coming from the Hyperledger Foundation clearly showing XRP being the global RTGS. And then there's something else tying, I'm having a total blank. I've said this so many times and normally I can explain it very easily, but like I said, I slept like 3 hours last night.
That's all good.
Now there's a video of, oh yeah, sorry. So in a central bank document, they say, it's from Deutsche Bank, I think it's a German central bank, they say that when the BIS talk about the regulated liability network, they call it the unified ledger. So now we've got confirmation that the regulated internal value, regulated liability network, the shared ledger, because Tony McLaughlin said the regulated liability network, because he says Tony McLaughlin said the shared ledger essentially he says that's what essentially is the regulated liability network, the shared ledger. He said they're the same thing. But then the document shows that the regulated liability network, the BIS, instead of saying the regulated liability network, they call it the unified ledger. So now we have confirmation the unified ledger, shared ledger, regulated liability network, regulated internal value, it's all the same thing. But in the US, they call it the regulated settlement network. And then I've got a video that I show of the head of technology for the BIS, so the central banks for all central banks. He's talking about how if we have a unified ledger, we can replace SWIFT. And he's talking about how the unified ledger replaces the corresponding banking system. Exactly what Ripple does, right? We're going to replace corresponding banking. We're going to remove all the friction, all the middlemen. And so he describes exactly what Ripple does. And he says, if we have the unified ledger, we can replace SWIFT. Well, who replaces SWIFT? Who has been saying for 7 years now, we're going to replace SWIFT. We're going to replace SWIFT. We're going to replace SWIFT. So what they do is they use all these different terminologies, kind of a unified ledger concept, shared ledger concept. And we also have diagrams too from the BIS showing how the interledger protocol is connecting unified ledger 1 to unified ledger 2. The reason that you're seeing more than one unified ledger, and this is where a lot of people are confused, is the reason it's so confusing is because technically the XRP ledger would be the main unified ledger. And when they say unified ledgers, plural, or shared ledgers, plural, that would be your CBDCs that are being built on the private ledgers of the XRP ledger. Because James Wallace said we purposely built a private ledger that is a carbon copy clone of the XRP ledger. James Wallace is the head of central bank engagement or central bank relations for Ripple. He said, we've built a private CBDC platform where central banks can launch their CBDCs on private ledgers, which are carbon copy clones of the public XRP ledger. And it has all the features, but it allows them their privacy. So the central banks are building on these private ledgers. And in one of my videos, I called them side chains, which is not the proper terminology. Months ago, I did a video. It was months ago. I said side chains. It was not the proper terminology. These are private ledgers. But so when you see the documents coming from the BIS saying that the Unified Ledger 1 is connected to Unified Ledger 2 via the Interledger Protocol, and this is the Finternet architecture, that Unified Ledger 1, the Unified Ledgers with an S, plural, those are your private CBDC ledgers. Sometimes they call them shared ledgers. And we have documents from the BIS also showing shared ledger, shared/private ledger. So sometimes they call them shared ledgers, sometimes they call them private ledgers. But the distinction here is people need to understand is the private, so like the Unified Ledger, or when they say a shared ledger without an S, not plural, that would be your XRP ledger. Shared ledgers and private ledgers would be what the CBDCs are being built on. And so the reason for this, and again, like Project Agora, it's all the same thing. It's literally, you take Project Nexus, Agora, Mariana, all of these different projects, Project Innovation Hub, like 80% of them, if it's talking about CBDCs or instant settlement or global liquidity or transnational network, sometimes they'll call it transnational network, or they'll call it a hub and spoke model. Like they got different terminologies. But if you put in the AI and you say, tell me how this is identical to Ripple, XRP, the XRP Ledger, RippleNet, it just literally gives you like 5 pages, how it's absolutely identical. And so...
So what,
and then,
sorry to just to...
No, please.
Just to...
Oh, you got to cut me off.
hone in on that thought. There's 2 things, but just before, I've got a bigger question and I'll come back to follow up. Why are they doing that? And at what point do they stop running these tests and experiments and actually just come out and say it? I've made a prediction, by the way, that within this year, maybe next year, I think we're on the precipice of an announcement of that magnitude where the technology will be selected. But like, what's your read on that? Why is it? When does it end? Why there's so many offshoots?
Yeah, so they always talk as if, theoretical, we're looking into it, it's a concept, it's hypothetical, it's complete BS. It's been planned for years, right? Like David Schwartz is holding the Bitcoin patent, literally, distributed computer system patent, 1991, you clearly show that. And then it could go on and on about the whole sequence of the whole technology, right? The same agency creates a paper on how to create a mint and so on and so forth. But it's not hypothetical. They know it works, right? Like it's literally maturing, but people are not realizing the whole Internet of Value, the whole XRP ledger, the adoption is it's maturing because CBDCs are being built all around it. And they're all launching, like 99% of the countries are building CBDCs. And from my understanding, Ripple's the only blockchain that has a CBDC platform where central banks can launch CBDCs like so easily. I don't think Stellar has a CBDC platform to launch. And I think HBAR might be working on a CBDC, but they certainly don't have, like, Brad Garlinghouse admitted like 5-6 years ago, where he said we're in communication with over 50 central banks. And then he's like, the only one we ever saw sitting with all of the central bankers, that famous photo where he's sitting with all the central bankers and the IMF and the BIS. And I mean, come on, he didn't just, drop in there by chance. Hey guys, what are you guys doing here? Can I sit with you guys? No. Like that photo alone speaks volume. So I think to me is they can't let the bag out of the hat. I do believe and this is just my theory, but I do believe that they've definitely done everything to keep the price low for a while. I think one of the reasons maybe they definitely don't want us to know. First of all, they don't want us to be rich. They all want us to be peasants. That's number one. in my opinion. Number two is I don't think they want the price to run on them. I think there's a strategy to keep the price low for a while. Again, this is just theory. It's hypothetical based on all my research. It's easier to incentivize partners if the price is low. That's a big thing. And the lawsuit would certainly help with that as well. Because if the price is low, you can go to a partner. They can go to all these different payment providers and these techs and CLS and everybody, Swift, all of them, and they could say, hey, bring your volume, bring your utility to the network, and if you keep your end of the obligation, you keep your end of the deal, you'll have, just like they did with R3, right? 5 billion XRPs, an option to buy at this price. It was like 0.008. It was less than a cent that R3 could execute, I believe, on that contract. So when it's cheap, it's easier to incentivize partners. And again, this is just speculation. It's one of the reasons why I think it'd be good to keep the price cheap, is because if you go to partners and say, well, we'll give you, oh, you have this much volume, okay, 100 million XRP for you. Oh, you have this much volume, 100 billion for you, and so on and so forth. And then when we flip the switch later, when XRP is 100 or 500 or $1,000 each, let's say, well, you guys will make this much money. So it's very easy to incentivize if the price is still cheap and it stays cheap for a very long time. But if the price is already, if everybody finds out about this and, it's the chosen one, it's the golden goose, and everybody FOMOs in, the retailers, the corporations, and everybody, the price is going to get away from them. And, if the price is $500, it's not as easy to incentivize somebody, say, hey, we'll give you this much XRP at $500. In 2 years from now, it'll be $700. Like, okay, it's fine. It's 40%, but it's not like, 100,000%. So I don't know. Like, I think they wanted the price low for a while. And again, this is just me speculating. So just that alone, if that's the case, they can't let this bag, the cat out of the bag. And also they don't want us to get rich. And these are, when you study the corporations and the institutions that are behind Ripple, right? The IMF, and you really study what they're all about. Oh my goodness, like most people would faint if they knew what they're really all about. Have you ever listened to ever listened to not Kevin Shipp, but John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman?
No, I'll add him to the list.
John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Oh my goodness. And another one I would recommend is Kevin Shipp, with 2 P's, like a ship, but with 2 P.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Kevin Shipp?
I have not.
Yeah, major whistleblower for the same intelligence agency that David Schwartz worked for. But he helped literally, he's the only person to hold as many top positions within the agency, and he became a whistleblower. My goodness.
I'll look into him.
Yeah.
So you don't really have a timeline on when they've eventually make it public.
Sorry. Yeah. I don't know if they ever will really make it public. If they want it to have like crazy adoption, then they would. But it already has the adoption it needs, right? Because the big volume is Swift and DTCC and the central bank. So I don't even know if they'll ever make it public where anybody that's watching the news would understand, like, oh, that's XRP. I think
it'll just happen.
It'll just happen.
The liquidity, because for it to serve its function, we obviously know that it needs to have a lot more liquidity within its veins than it does now. Certainly to leverage the ODL component of the architecture. So do you think it's just a natural progression that dominoes fall? So this year, obviously, there's a big priority around getting to T-1 settlement, and 24/7 settlement of the stock market. You reckon it just sort of chunk by chunk, the liquidity increases, and then they never have to really disclose?
You're really hitting me with the $1 trillion questions. I think they have to ramp up liquidity, which they're already there. I think it's just a matter of flipping some switches now, I think, to a certain degree. with the recent acquisitions and everything. So I think it's just a matter of flipping switches, lining up corridors maybe. So, because I think they kind of I think they have to ramp it up, but I think they're there. I think everything's in place to ramp up. I think it would be my opinion. And, but I thought 4 or 5 years ago that the price would have been way higher, even 5 years ago, right? So that's why I'm very cautious to say price price speculation, or say some price. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm Frenchy.
Well, I think it's
Yeah,
more. I've always been similar.
price
I'm more
predictions. Sorry.
price predictions. Yeah, I'm not really around. I'm more just sort of the liquidity rollouts,
Yeah,
because we have so many liquidity wrappers that just aren't
I think
there
they
yet.
ramped it up.
That yeah, and it should be there. I think it's what I will say is on the price thing before I then pivot back to public versus private, because I want to double tap into that with you, is the fact that in my eyes, as it stands now, just simply off acquisitions and the fundamental news that we've received in the last 18 months alone, the asset should be valued way higher than Bitcoin. It should be easily a $3-4 trillion asset. It's purely, even if it is just speculation, purely off the news. And that's my honest opinion. And that fair value is not reflected at all.
I agree 100%, because, and I've talked about this just recently. Like, a lot of people don't realize, like, you have a token capturing the value of an internet here. And this is something I've brainstormed a lot. And this is one of the reasons I started my channel too, aside from all the FUD that I was seeing and the misinformation. Because I just started my channel like maybe 8 months ago. And they're building an internet here. Like, this is not just a payment platform. This is not just a payment network, a payment company. This is an internet protocol. It's the Interledger protocol is an internet grade protocol. It's like the TCP, except that when the Internet of Information was built, it didn't have a token capturing the value of the network. So this is an internet play here. They're building an internet called the Internet of Value, and the XRP token technically should be capturing the value of this new internet. And the Internet of Information we have was the greatest paradigm shift and the greatest creation of utility we've ever seen. People can't even measure the utility of the internet. You can't measure it. And so you have a token capturing the value of an internet. And I never hear anybody talk about that at all. This is an internet. You have a token literally capturing the value of an internet protocol. And this is huge. Like, we've only ever had one other internet, which was the Internet of Information, which was the third industrial age. It's just, this is crazy, right? And so, like you said, like, just that alone, like, the price of XRP should be just based on that speculation. It should be insane. And we see the proof that they're working with the central banks. I mean, and that's what I said the other day too. I said, the idea that XRP can't hit $10 or $20, when we know that they'll settle for the money for the Bank of England alone. The Bank of England does more volume in one day than Bitcoin does in a whole year. And if Bitcoin's at 2 trillion, how the heck can XRP not be, 7-8x and be at 2 trillion too, when it's going to hand just the Bank of England alone? And that's one central bank out of 170 central banks. And the Federal Reserve, I think, is 7 times bigger than the Bank of England. I don't know in regards to volume, but I believe in regards to net assets or whatever, I think it's 7 times bigger than the Bank of England. And we know that the Federal Reserve is going to settle with XRP too. I've done 2 deep dives on that. The Federal Reserve.
The Bank of England was, Mark Carney was doing the test pilots in 2017, the now Prime Minister of Canada.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks so everyone thinks he's just some lackey liberal. It's no. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. He knows how to destroy a country.
Yeah, and sorry I cut you off, but
no, it's okay. You got to cut me off, Nate, because if you don't cut me off, you'll never have a chance to talk. Start me on XRP.
Let's quickly pivot into this notion of private public, because I've done a fair few pieces of content on it. I want your thoughts. I'll preface with my thoughts, and then I'd like you to, even critique and give your oversight on it. The way I've kind of read this private public thing, because it is really at the forefront of a lot of the broader XRP community's mind, these alternate prices, these, as you touched on earlier, actually, these regulated side chains, if that's the correct term.
Well, they're private ledgers. Sorry, I called them side chains in one of my videos, but I wasn't using the right terminology, is what I'm saying. Yeah. It's private ledgers.
Yeah. And so I was fortunate enough to listen to David Schwartz talk in Singapore last year. And there's this one question towards the end, which was based around a new feature rollout that they launched in August of 2025 called permissioned domains, which essentially would be leveraging the DEX in a way that he originally envisaged, because it hasn't been leveraged at all thus far. And the reason being is that, as you touched on, you've got these institutions that want their privacy with their transactions. Plus, anyone that they're engaging in needs to be very rigorously KYC'd. They can't, if there's any chance of a terrorist being in their ledger or public ledger, public version, they can't do it. So they've launched this permission domains component with the aim, in David Schwartz's words, to be able to allow institutions to also engage with the public facing kind of liquidity pools and decks of value that they originally envisaged, because no one can access the permission domain unless they fulfill the rigorous KYC. So do you, in a long-winded roundabout way, do you think there will always be this permanent fracture between the two? And will the value, how will the value be finally represented? Is it through these permission domains, or will it always remain separate through zero knowledge proofs, perhaps? I don't know. I'd love your thoughts on all of that.
Can you ask me that last phrase again? Sorry, I was just checking my mic because I thought there was something wrong with my mic. Can you ask me that last question? Sorry.
So do you think that the private value will eventually be stipulated publicly, or will it always be separate, like a lot of people theorize? Or do you think, like I think, these permission domains can act as sort of a bridge, an intermediary, to allow the value to come on? And perhaps an additional wrapper to that could be this notion of zero knowledge proofs as well, kicking into the XRPL, which Schwartz has talked about. Do you see a convergence, or do you see them separate? And what does that mean for the overall value of the network?
Very good question. For me, I see them definitely converging. I think that's the end goal. Because if you look at the Hyperledger Foundation document, they're now called the Decentralized Trust. It said that the XRP ledger was the global RTGS and the global liquidity marketplace. For the XRP ledger, which has the decentralized exchange that you're talking about, and the order books, plus the automated market makers, which are crazy advanced, in order for it to be the global liquidity marketplace, it has to all connect and flow. You can't, and even David Schwartz says, because he was asked by Thinking Crypto, sorry, while you were talking there, I took a drink of water and it went down the wrong J's and rice.
Good.
It's rough, Nate, but we'll get there. When he was asked by Thinking Crypto, David Schwartz, about, do you think the price will be, the price of XRP will be different in different pools? Immediately, David Schwartz, and some things he said I take with a grain of salt, right, because of the agency that he worked for. So, but I've analyzed the way he answers it, and right away he says no, because if you have the price of XRP, it's more expensive somewhere, cheaper somewhere else. Somebody's going to make a business out of it to get that, going to jump on that. Yeah, arbitrage, right? So to me, I think it eventually all consolidates on the public ledger, like you said, on I think it all converges. I definitely think, yeah, because it's the only way it makes sense. But has that question robbed me some sleep at night? I mean, I've thought about it a lot and I've looked into it a lot. But
Definitely.
to me, it has to.
Yeah, and I think it's what.
I just want to add one thing. Sorry, the reason is because the whole reason for XRP, the public XRP ledger, is to fix the Bretton Woods. It's to do a new Bretton Woods. So it's to fix the Triffin's dilemma, because by doing a public ledger that all the nations can settle through, this allows all the nations to do their own monetary policy, and they don't have to worry about being forced to hold the US dollar to do their trade or another currency. They can all do whatever they want, and when it comes to settling, they just settle through XRP. They don't have to hold the sovereign currency of another nation just to do the trade. It's called the Triffin's dilemma. There's many issues with having a global reserve currency serve there's many issues with a sovereign currency like the US dollar serving as a global reserve currency. There's many issues. And that's what they're trying to solve. That's the goal. this is technically dating back to the Bretton Woods 1945. If we want to go really deep, technically what they're doing here is the Bancor. It was proposed in 1945, the Bretton Woods, that they could use Bancor instead of US dollar. They didn't go with that. Then they created the SDR, which is technically the same thing. It didn't work because it never gained that global adoption. Now they're doing XRP. So the reason, sorry, where's it going at? That's why you need you need them to merge. The whole reason that the XRP ledger was created so that the central banks could do their own monetary policy, and then when they need to settle, they can use the public XRP ledger and the order books and the AMM. So to me, it all has to merge. It has to. And I'm hoping I'm right because, I mean, but to me, it's a yes. And because if it didn't, Nate, why would they have to hide it from us? If it was never gonna be worth, way more in the future, and if it wasn't gonna be what we're thinking is gonna be, why would they have to hide it from us if it's never gonna touch the public ledger and it's never gonna be worth much? To me, it has to. Sorry, long answer there, long-winded answer, but it has to.
Yes.
I hope, but I
And
might
I
be
think
wrong.
yeah, from my research, it's pretty clear to me. It's also just a very, very layered, granular wealth preservation strategy for the elite banking families from hundreds of years ago. You follow it. I mean, that's the breadcrumbs I've followed very, very meticulously, and the economic amalgams that have key personnel that are representing this agenda. And this is their only option. It does culminate in that Bretton Woods style 2.0 moment in time, and we see that with the precious metals and what's going on there. Like, it's wild right now. So I couldn't agree more. Slight pivot here. I wanted to get your thoughts on a philosophical question that I really grapple with a lot, and it's this understanding that, you mentioned you're a man of God at the top of the call. So am I, and a lot of the community, vast majority, as you probably know, are they're either Christian or they're great moral people. They're whatever. They're just very good people. There's not much materialism and ego and vanity and all the bad things within the community, and we can both acknowledge that there are some malevolent forces and some suspect contributors to the Ripple story. Why do you feel that God put the man on the seat that had a doobie and told you about Bitcoin that day? And why do you feel you're so prolifically pushed to share all this information, despite the darkness that is undoubtedly involved?
Yeah, so 100%. Like, I do believe this is definitely leading us into a cashless society, right? Which, again, they've been working on planning a cashless society for many years. It's part of Bible prophecy, right? Jesus spoke about it. It's that whole, eventually, the mark of the beast. You can't buy, sell, or trade without a mark. So if you can't buy or sell or trade without a mark, it means likely there's no cash, because if cash still existed, people could accept cash from you, whether you have the mark or not, if somebody wanted to accept it. So it's definitely leading us into that cashless society that Christians believe in, right? And but for me, it's not right now. Like, XRP is not that mark of the beast. It's not right now, but it's definitely leading us into it. I don't know, is it 100 years, 50 years, 200 years, even 500 years? God knows. But to me, I'm hoping that it's going to be worth a fortune so I can help others, take care of my family, and definitely be a blessing to others, which I think most Christians should definitely should be one of their motives for sure, as Christians. And that's why I'm in it. I'm hoping that that's why God showed me this. I'm hoping that the price will reflect the research I've done, and yeah, so that I can be a blessing for others, right? What we're called to do, so to help others, because it's ridiculous that there's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and this is going, like, the corruption is unbelievable. Like, people shouldn't be starving, right? Like, with the gazillions of dollars we have, people shouldn't be starting. And I'm not talking about. I'm not saying it's wrong to be a billionaire or trillionaire. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the corruption, right? I mean, corruption, so on and so forth. The billions of dollars that are being wasted is unbelievable. Like it's so, yeah. I'm just hoping that it's going to be worth a fortune so that I can be a blessing for others. But I've been waiting a long time, and I thought it would be a while back. Like to me, I thought XRP was going to be $100 to $1,000 literally 4 years ago because of everything we talked about. Because the price jumped to like $3 or $4 at the end of December, I think it was roughly
2018 early, yeah.
Yeah, like beginning of January, end of like January 2018, and literally no banks were connected to RippleNet at the time, almost none, very little. After that, Brad Garlinghouse admitted they were connecting like 5-6 banks per week. Some people said that he said 2 or 3, but I remember him saying 5 banks per week. They admitted they had 100, then they admitted they had 200, then he admitted that they were connecting 5-6 banks per week, but let's say it was just 2 or 3. 2 or 3 banks per week is literally 150 per year times 8 years, right? When you like times 7 years, because when he said this was like 6 years ago, so times 6 years, that's 1,000 banks right there. We know Swift is using XRP for settlement. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, well, it's going to use Lenio, it's going to lose T." No, there's only 2 purposely built bridge asset that would have enough liquidity when it scales to settle that amount of volume, and it's XRP. People don't understand that these other blockchains, whether it's Solana, whether it's you name them, like they can't. They're not purposely built bridge assets. You don't press a button automatically. It just multi hops, pat finding, and literally goes from any type of currency to any type of currency. You like it doesn't happen. They're like, show me the tech, show me the code, show me the like. There's no other technology that does that. So it's Swift is not going to use anything else but XRP. And so anyway, so my point is like it went to like $4 8 years ago before any of this, before RippleNet was even connecting banks like crazy and crazy. So how the heck can it still be, sitting at the same price it was 8 years ago? Like it's nonsense. Like to me, this it just doesn't make sense. Like something's fishy. Like I don't know if I answered your question, but
they're manipulating for sure. What's in your journey? Has there been like? I just want to go back. I'm kind of jumping between timelines a little bit, but I'm keen to get the backstory built in as well. When you started your research deep dive, do you recall a smoking gun moment? Like a moment where you were just sitting there going, whoa.
First one that comes to mind is there was probably a lot of them, obviously, but the first one that comes to mind right off is love for crypto. He's not convinced on Quant. We have a different opinion on Quant. I just want to say that right away. If you watch his videos, I don't agree with him about QNT, but I watched a few videos of love for crypto, literally like 7 years ago. It would probably still to this day the most powerful videos I have ever watched on XRP. But I've watched a lot of them, and I'm very thankful for all the content creators out there. But that was one of the videos I'll always remember. It's one of them is called "Get Ready for a New World Order," I think. And but if you go on Love for Crypto and you look at his playlists, or you just Love for Crypto and you put his most popular videos, that it's unreal. Like it's a 3-hour video. He's showing Kevin Ship I was talking to you about. He's interviewing people, whistleblowers from the World Bank. I mean, it is unbelievable. He's showing the debt crisis, what it really is. That one, if there's anything that really, wow, aha, okay, this is it. It was that Love for Crypto. You have to look you go on his YouTube channel and you look for most popular videos. Oh my goodness, just that one video alone is like you're done. Like it's you're sold pretty much.
Wow. I've actually never seen him. I've just looked it up now. That's bizarre. Yeah, he's got like 2 hours, 42 minutes, nearly 300,000 views.
Yeah, that video is unbelievable. He's got a few other too, like Get Ready for Internet Value 5,000. I think it's XRP $5,000. There's other but holy crap, that one there, you Get Ready for a New World Order. My goodness.
Wow.
My goodness. Like I've now
shout
for
out
me
Love for
because of all the
Crypto, eh?
Yeah, shout out for Love for Crypto. This was years ago. Like I've done my own research now, but man, at the time it's like, oh my goodness. Still to this day, like I was listening to it like 3 months ago. Again,
Yeah.
like just wanted to pick some stuff to do a deep dive using some of his stuff. I was gonna steal some of his stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely encourage
Crazy.
everybody to watch that video. Yeah. And Nate's
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, check mine
Definitely.
out as well. Yeah, Ripple Bible series coming out, third part very soon, and I'm going to
My
release.
goodness, man.
Yeah, probably be in total. I'd like it to be probably similar, 2 and a bit hours to put all three together, and I'll release that as well.
Your stuff is unbelievable, man.
Thank
Like, I
you.
didn't have time to watch as much as I wanted to because I've been setting up my community and all these things, but like I watched more the other day. I was like, oh my goodness, this guy's done his research. So yeah, no, it's crazy, man. Like you've done a lot of research.
Yeah, it's funny how we all have our own little niches and ways of going about presenting our learnings, and it's just so good. I echo your sentiments. I think there's a very clear reason we're all in this. We're trying to get as many people on the proverbial boat as possible before it does take off in price. And I know there's going to be so much good that comes from that because a lot of our priorities are going to be just redistributing and helping others. And I can't wait for that chapter to really kick off. Let's stay focused on your thoughts here. I wanted to get some more recent stuff into the purview, the Clarity Act. So there's been a fair bit this week on market structure, and they've got markups. I think Thursday your time, Friday my time. They're presenting markups, I should say. What do you think this piece of legislation really means? How do you read it? And do you think this could potentially be one of the catalysts for accelerated liquidity within the system?
Yeah, wow, that's a good question. Yeah, if it can pass with reasonable, rules and stuff, it'll be extremely good. But people have to understand it's literally the Trump administration versus the central bankers, right? Everything we've been talking about, right? Um, Trump is going after the same people without going too much in politics because we know some people watch a lot of mainstream media might have not the same opinion, but he's after the same people JF Kennedy was against. So, and the banks are obviously trying to keep control. So I think a lot of that, the back and forth here is that they don't want the exchanges to be able to give out interest returns to their clients because if they do, then the banks, why would people go to the banks anymore and so on? I think that's the major struggle, if I'm not mistaken, but I haven't studied it. I haven't studied as much as other people, like the whole timelines. Okay, if this happens, then it's going to be, 3 days after. And I'm not the expert on these, how these motions, these things happen within Congress, but I know that they're not, for the most part, a lot of them are not really, don't have the agenda of the people for sure. But yeah, I think definitely if it can pass, where it's reasonable and the technology can be used by anybody and everybody without all this complete BS, it has to be extremely huge. But again, it's the Trump administration putting America first without starting, 10 different 10 different wars to do it, right? So it's the Trump administration versus the bankers is what I see here. And half the Congress being obviously controlled by the banks and the corporations, or the banking Senate, like they're all bank representatives. They're not representing the people, right? So that's what's happening there. That's how I see it. But yeah,
Interesting.
Would you agree with that, Nate, or what do you think? What are your thoughts? It's okay to school me.
No, I do. I definitely see the biggest contention point. It was written in the stone within the Genius Act that there's very rigid guidelines on who will be able to issue stable coins. The fact that it has to be pegged to either debt or other instruments, to synthetically prop up the debt situation. But there was very clear kind of insinuations as to being able to control, and this would have been the banking cartel doing this, how the stablecoin issuance and yield was generated. Because as you rightly said, if you're offering 8-9% on Coinbase and JP Morgan can only give you 4%, well, everyone's going to go to Coinbase. And you see this week as well that Coinbase, I think it was yesterday, Brian Armstrong's already supposedly threatening to pull his support from the market structure bill for that very reason, because there's huge pushback on the yields. So I don't know. I kind of see it as they're going to have to land at a happy medium. I think that there's too much momentum and it ain't going away. Because, look, if it doesn't go through, well, there's still nothing stopping businesses offering these types of products to their clients. And because they're so big now, we'll probably just take them. But as for Trump and the political stuff, I really struggle to get a full read on him. I know that his, through the certain lobbyists involved with him, he's hamstrung to a certain extent. He's probably doing the best he can.
Yeah. No, listen, like, yeah, he's doing the
Yeah,
best he can. Like, imagine.
but he's hamstrung to an extent. So, like anyone, we're all human at the end of the day, morally corruptible individuals.
Now, for me, it's like he's the only president that literally lost like $1 billion. He doesn't need this BS. The whole idea that he did it for money. He doesn't need it. He's 85 word billions. He doesn't need it. It's complete BS. Like literally, if he was working for the system even 1%, they wouldn't have thrown everything they threw at him. All the intelligence agencies, they threw everything they could, like 85 to 90 bogus charges. And this thing that hit his ear. How many times they tried to do that? That's the times that we know about. So why is that? Is because he's going against the system. He's going against the same people JF Kennedy was going against. 100%. 100%. Because when you watch his interviews over past 20 years, they were asking him for 20, 30 years. Even years ago, they've been asking him, you think you'll ever run for president? Nah, I'll never run for president. But when I see what they're doing to our country, but no, I don't think I'll ever run. And every year is the same story. They ask him, hey, because he was popular before he decided to go against the system. He was very popular. It was very, very, very popular, right? And so same question, same answer. No, I don't think I'll ever run for president, but when I see what they're doing to our country and so on and so forth. So, I mean, no, he's, I'm going to lose a few people here, but it's okay. I think people who've listened to me before know that I'm strong supporter. And I understand, like, I understand people that would be confused there then thinking he's not, because that's all you hear in mainstream media. Like, he can't even bring his wife for supper. He did something wrong. Like, come on. If you look at the Biden administration, compare the Biden administration, I mean, anyways. I mean, but if it wasn't the Trump administration that was in power right now, the banks would have got everything they wanted.
Like, this is true.
100%.
But ultimately, what is the thing is, ultimately, if we are moving to the grid, the control grid, is he not propagating a big component of that? Or do you feel it's this? I mean, I know he's pulled away from the UN and like
everything. He's pulled out of every organization.
Do you where do you see the US in the next sort of 5 to 10 years? Do you think it's salvageable for you guys to still retain the global world reserve currency kind of what's the word, status? Or do you feel like we are moving towards do you see blockchain as the postured solution to not just overthrow, but to really appease what the BRICS have been doing? And maybe that's the better question here. Where do you see that all playing out? Because you're hearing a lot lately that this is the demise of the US. I'm not on the ground over there. I don't know what it's like on the streets. And as you said, there's a lot of fake media. So I'm not going to try and judge that. But do you feel asserted that the country's still in a good way and that it's salvageable?
Well, to be clear, I've never said to anybody where I was, but I'm going to give a bit of information there. But I'm not there, but I'm not far. And I think a lot of people figured out where I was, but I'm not in the US, but I'm not far away.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know, like if Trump administration, if it's not him and the people who believe in his ideas for America, if they don't continue, if something happens to him and it's not, Vance that takes over somebody else with his same ideas, same agenda, do what's right for America, it's over. Like if somebody like Biden or others prior to him that are working for, you know, the elites get in, like, it's over. America's over, in my opinion, right? Because I mean, look what they did in 5 years, just in 5 years. I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness, I'm careful about what I say just for my own safety, right? But, um, I mean, what Elon Musk just posted like 600 billion. They're thinking that it's about 10% right now of the U.S. budget, annual budget. 600 billion is just basically corruption. And Elon Musk, who audited the U.S. aid, and these said that that's on the low side, right? And this all happened prior to Trump, right? Many wars that we had that we didn't need, all under false pretext, like all these things, like the deficit ran from like 4 trillion to like 30 some trillion in a matter of like 20 years. Imagine that like the US went from 0 to 4 trillion in debt with 2 world wars, all these different things, right? And then in a matter of 20 years, it literally, the debt was like 800% with no world wars.
What do you think the debts, the two more questions. The debt scenario is very interesting. I've kind of gone down about a year ago and said that I can see the Trump's actually being very creative in trying to resolve that problem. There's probably a couple of paths he could take. I think there's a lot more to be written within the gold narrative. I've put my flag on the hill and said I think he'll revalue gold within his term. There's a litany of reasons for that. But also, just mathematically speaking, if things do play out the way we think they could from a liquidity perspective within the right assets, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to calculate that they really could solve a lot of these problems, these debt problems, if they got creative. Do you see things like that as well?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Nate. So where I am not sure is, okay, so because this is a global debt crisis. The global liquidity crisis is technically a global debt crisis, right? It's a very, very bad problem. They've been kicking the ball down the road now. They kicked the can in 1998. Was it? No, 2008, 2009. We had a debt crisis. What did he do? They printed more money, lowered the interest rates, so created more debt. And then in 2020, they needed an excuse to create more debt. They needed an excuse to print money. And then there's this situation that happened in 2020. Really nice situation for them. It allowed them to print more money and blame it on this event that happened and call it, the COVID crisis. But in reality, the central banks were already ramping up printing globally before the event. That's what a lot of people don't talk about. So they've been kicking this can down the road, and that has to be addressed at one point. And the IMF is a lender of last resort. And then we have Miguel Villas when he was at Ripple, he was asked by Thinking Crypto, what do you think you guys will do with the 50 billion XRP? And he says, well, to me, I don't think we'd sell it all. I kind of see in my mind, maybe we become like a lender of last resort of some sort. Said, I know like for a private company to be a lender of last resort, some things, I'm kind of paraphrasing there, I don't remember word for word, but this is what he said. For a private company to be a lender of last resort, I know things would probably have to change structurally, or maybe we just give our XRP to another institution and they become a lender of last resort. The only lender of last resort on planet Earth is the IMF. So to answer your question, kind of, is the thing I don't know here is when they were building out Ripple and planning this for many, many years under the guise of Ripple, you're using a private company to build this solution for the global liquidity crisis, to fix the Triffin's dilemma, to create a new Bretton Woods, to do all these things. They're using this private company to do this. Really, it's the IMF that's behind it all, in my opinion. But at the time, the U.S. administrations at the time, the last 20, 30 years, have been, like this with the IMF. They've been like this with the central bankers, the big corporations, and so on and so forth. So now that there's an administration there, it's a different, how would I say that? It's a different administration with different ideologies, different ideas, different goals than they had anticipated.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if you look at the Obama administration, if you really study Obama, not what the media told you about him, but his policies, what it really did to America, and Biden, and literally Bush. And you study really everything, right? And you see that they're puppets. Man, I'm nervous to share some stuff sometimes. So this is when Ripple's being built out. Now they're ready to launch Ripple. Like, we're there. We're at the precipice, right? This unified ledger, the BIS, all this stuff. But it's a very different administration in the U.S. with a different idea of how the world, the geopolitics should work, and what would be what America's role should be in all this, and how we shouldn't start a war every 2 seconds and all this stuff. So that's what I don't understand. Like, who the heck gets this escrow? Like, how is this escrow divided now? Like,
that is the ultimate. That's where I was getting at with the Trump probing. Is
exactly
that you've got? It seems like there is a policy alternate posturing from the US, but I also think it ultimately leads to the same result because Ripple have hedged themselves. I personally think they've already preordained chunks of the escrow to these institutions.
Absolutely.
Just like they put money into, Larson donated to Kamala Harris. They're the ultimate hedgers. That's why they're across every jurisdiction. They've got their fingerprints everywhere. So my answer to your question, if I've interpreted it right, would be they have played the ultimate 5D chess since day one. And that's probably because, just like their superiors, which is ultimately the legacy banking families that pull the strings all the way down through these economic amalgams that I have extensively covered, it doesn't really matter. Even if there is this supposed pushback in the States or this anti-BRICS narrative, you're still going to need the centerpiece of whatever this culmination event looks like. There needs to be a trust layer, something that is borderless, that is, I think it was, it's been referenced a couple of times in some of the documents, a supranational currency. Supra.
Yeah. The first time it leaked.
Yeah. And that to me is pointed to this. It really doesn't matter where it heads mathematically, probabilistically. And then for me, it's like, I know from higher up, God's got our back and I trust his plan. And this is all just, it's not just coincidence that we're here doing what we're doing. Because I think there's going to be something that happens that triggers things, and probably beyond our wildest imaginations. But the reason it plays in our favor from a practical standpoint is because they're hedged everywhere.
Yeah,
all the tracks
but the US does need a bridge currency as well, and it's okay if we talk about the Triffin's dilemma a bit.
Go for it.
Okay, so at Bretton Woods in 1945, when it was created, Bretton Woods after World War II, all the nations came together, and they said, okay, how do we do this new global? How do we set this up now? And the US was the most powerful country at the time, and I think financially strongest, so on, and so that's the same day the IMF and the World Bank were created, the Bretton Woods Agreement, 1945. I think they started the agreement in 1944. I think it was finalized 1945. Sorry, but anyways, they proposed two different ideas: the U.S. dollar being global reserve currency. All the nations in the world would use U.S. dollars to settle their transactions, their global trade, and the U.S. would agree to hold reserves of gold to back every dollar they issued. That was option one. Option two was they would create a bancor. It would be a neutral currency that the IMF would control, and it would not be tied to any government. This would allow every government, it would prevent all the governments to have to hold a sovereign currency of another nation to do their global trade. Excuse me. So at the time, they decided to go with the US dollar. In 1969, and remember, the Bancor is the IMF that was supposed to manage the Bancor, but they went with the US dollar. In 1969, the IMF creates the special drawing rights, the SDR, which is supposed to serve as a complementary reserve asset to the US dollar. 1971, but it failed. Actually, let me rewind because I forgot to say something. In 1945, when they created Bretton Woods, and they chose the US dollar as global reserve currency for all the countries to do their global trade with, there was an economist his last name was Triffins. And he said, this is not going to work. Like, it's going to be fine for now, but in the future, the US is going to have to run trade deficits in order to supply the world with currencies, in order to supply the world with liquidity, and to do the trade and to help the economy. It's going to have to run trade deficits. Long term, this doesn't work, regardless of the country, not only for the US. He said this is going to be problematic. And I think they probably saw that in the 1960s, 80s, that it was starting to be problematic because we see the special drawing rights being created by the IMF. But the IMF only gave it to central banks. They never gave it to banks and regular banks and tech companies and fintechs and retailers and everybody to get global adoption. So my understanding, it never got that global adoption because they only gave it to central banks. And because the US dollar had more liquidity, central banks kept just using the US dollar more rather than using the special drawing rights, the SDR. So, so now after 1988, we see the famous Economist magazine, and nobody ever talks about the article. They all talk about the rising phoenix, but never talk about what the article actually said. And the article argued that there was new technologies that would help them to create a new world reserve currency, and it would help with global trade, FX, and liquidity. And the article, in a very subtle way, argued that the IMF would be the best institution to manage this new world reserve currency because of their experience in the SDR, even though it failed. Very interesting, right? Your thing failed, but, so the year after, the article said, so the new world reserve currency, the rising phoenix, argued that this currency would come on the world stage around 2018, is where we see RippleNet getting its adoption. So the article is written in The Economist magazine 1988, but in 1989 is when and it says that we have new technologies to do it now. And, like I said, the IMF would be the best institution to manage this. And so and then the year after is when David Schwartz gets the patent for distributed computer systems. And then 6 years later, same intelligence agencies, the same intelligence agency writes a paper on cryptography, how to create a mint. And then 6-7 years later, there's another paper. They create the SHA-256, which is the underlying technology for Bitcoin. 100%. And then 6-7 years later, 8 years later, we get the Bitcoin white paper and the BS story.
Yeah. Have you also looked at, just a side note, just really quickly, in Ripple Bible Part 2, you should watch, I prove as well that Ripple Communications, which emerged in the 90s, also links to this woman, Karen Nussel, and her husband, Jim Nussel, worked under the Bush era administration. He still currently chairs the SUNA, Your Credit Union National Association. He also co-created with the credit union, I believe it was called CU Ledger, which is all of the US's credit union stuff on blockchain. And they are directly partnered with R3 Corda. And what is that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that gives you it is a full intelligence link that I show from the 90s.
Yeah, I watched the first video and I'm planning to watch the second one as soon as I get a minute.
It's wild.
I was blown away. No, I was blown away because that's what I was like, holy crap, this guy has done a lot of research.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness. But where was I going with that?
Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted.
No, I don't. No,
plays
like I
into
said, you have to cut me off because
we were heading towards the sort of SDR, the solution, the posturing.
Yeah. Sorry. So the reason I was saying all that story, is because the US can't keep running trade deficits. Right. So what they're doing with Ripple is technically they're redoing the SDR. They're literally redoing the Bancor vision of having a neutral bridge currency that allows every country in the world to do their own monetary policy. right? They're not forced to hold the US dollar or the euro or another currency, another sovereign currency to do their trade. They can do whatever they want, hold whatever they want, you know. You want to hold cow manure, do your trade, whatever, hold whatever you want. Because when you want to settle your trade, you just send your currency, and automatically XRP will settle the transaction, and the other nation will receive their currency or whatever they want, right? So it's about fixing that Triffin's dilemma. So the US does need the XRP ledger. They do need this. But again, the question is like, who the heck gets this escrow? How is it divided? What portion does, do they flip the switch and they wipe out half the debt? Like, what's the plan? And that's $1 trillion question. And
yeah, well, I think that's probably been discussed at roundtables. It's also very strange that, these reserves, the Trump media holdings, companies that have, well, we're starting to see, these listeds wrap XRP in like Evernorth, but there's not much public disclosure of XRP holdings, within these reserves. I know the treasuries will kick in and all that sort of stuff soon, but I find that strange. I find that, Trump obviously knows where this is going, but it's still all Bitcoin, Ethereum. Eric Trump buys 10,000 Ethereum. It's not. There's probably a discussion that's been had that's gone, look, when the time is right, this is where this allotment of XRP is going. Maybe to the treasury. I don't know how it all works, but I think that's all preordained, is where I've landed.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And again, that's the question is, I think the plan on how much the US gets or, how this works out would have probably been a bit different before Trump got into the office. That's the thing. I don't know how that works and so on. Because if the majority of it's allocated to the IMF, well, I think the US is the biggest quota holder of SDRs, or the IMF, their biggest quota holder. Those are things that I don't understand 100%.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so they've all agreed they can't talk about it though. That's one thing. Like, regardless if Trump is for their agenda, I know he's not, but I mean, regardless, the good guys, the bad guys, they've all agreed they can't talk about it. Again, because I think it has to do, like, you can't. They don't want the price to run. I think there's certain things that need to take place before they can let the cat out of the bag. But you're right. For whatever reason, even everybody, even Elon, like, everybody, doesn't matter if they're a good side and a bad side, they will not really say what they think about XRP. And Elon, like, I saw a really awesome deep dive, and I wish I could find it, but on the original X.com website, it's full of interledger Ripple stuff. The original website, X.com, that Elon has owned for years. Sorry, it used to be full. If you look at the back end, I guess, or what used the pages that used to be on the site, it's all interledger protocol or RippleNet stuff, and
that's another whole rabbit hole. That's in part 2 as well. So you
nice.
gotta watch that.
Okay. I'll have to watch
him
that
and
one
Peter
too.
Thiel. But look, I'm conscious of time. This has been terrific. And I think in closing from me, and I'd like your closing thoughts, I think I've prescribed to the idea that when it does finally move, it's going to move violently and quick. And it really boils down to when they want that to happen. It's the end of the day.
Yeah, like I've seen documents where they talk about a global backed stablecoin, and it describes XRP to the T. Okay, so that's what I'm wondering is, like, do they just say, boom, okay, we're backing it to gold, we're pegging it to gold, like, what, I don't know, but I don't know if it's that flip of the switch, or they say, oh, we'll run it to $10 because we know that 70% of people are going to sell at 10 or 50%. We'll run it to 50 to 100 because we know by then 90% of XRP holders will sell out of, like, okay, because they don't know what they're holding, or out of because they need the money or whatever reason. But they could just run it a bit because they know the majority of the retailers will sell by then, and then crank it up. That it's the only that could be a play too, or like you said, just a flip of the switch and because they need to or whatever. But
No, I think that plays in. When I say run violently, I mean it's not going to just go to like $3 again and then fizzle down to like it'll move to 10 probably. Get a lot of retail out, 20, get even more out. There's only 300,000 people that have more than 3,000 tokens. That's nothing. So you wipe out 70% of them. Are they really going to care if 100,000 people hang on?
yeah, no, and most
No.
no. By the time you're $100 at $100, you've probably lost 80-90% of them.
Exactly. So if there's 50,000 people left on Earth that refuse to sell, like you and me, they're not going to care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think like some people think like, oh, they got to keep the price low. They don't want us to get rich. Most people are not going to get rich. Like if this thing's going to hit 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, most people won't get there anyways.
No. Look, Jesse, it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish we'd go for longer, but we will do another one, and we'll
That
do
would
it
be
more
awesome.
specifically as well. I'm going to continue to digest a lot of your stuff because it's
Same
only
here.
been a week, and then I'm sure we'll be able to butt heads again in the next couple of months and then go even further. So this is just a little taste tester for you guys. It's been a pleasure to have you on, Jesse. Love your work. It's been great chatting and getting to know you, and I look forward to doing it again in the future.
Yeah, it was an honor to be on your show, man. Same thing. I've got a lot of catching up. I've got a lot of your deep dives I've got to watch because watched a few and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do his whole channel. I was blown away, man. And it's really an honor that you've invited me, and I hope we can do it again soon. Yeah, for sure.
Cheers,
I'll
brother.
definitely up for that. Cheers, brother. Thank you.
All right, it's not letting me stop. That's where we'll stop it. But it says you've heard me fine the last 10 minutes because it said that it's been trying to reconnect to the internet. I've been fine.
Yeah. I
Weird.
was hearing you perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you're 99%.
I'm 99% right now. So let me.
Yeah, because it's not letting me stop.
It's because it's at 99 probably.
Yeah, but it won't even let me stop the recording.
Oh yeah, that's right. If you can't stop it.
Just stay in here. I'm just going to refresh. So you just stay there and let me refresh this page. Hopefully we don't. Yeah, cool. You still there?
Yeah, but it's still at 99%.
I'm going to stop now.